You know, after 40 years on the bench, I thought I had seen everything, every type of person, every excuse, every attitude. But let me tell you something. Just when you think you've seen it all, someone walks into your courtroom and proves you wrong. Before I go any further, if you enjoy these stories about justice and standing up for what's right, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us share these important lessons with more people who need to hear them. It was a Wednesday morning in March. I remember because my wife had reminded me the night before that it was our grandson's birthday and I needed to leave court on time. I got to the courthouse at 8:15 a.m. like I always do. Been doing it for 4 decades. My father used to tell me, "Frank, if you're on time, you're already late," so I'm always early. Christina, my clerk, she's been with me for 15 years now. She had my coffee ready, strong black coffee, the Italian way. No cream, no sugar, just pure coffee. She knows how I like it. I'm sitting there going through my docket for the day, and Christina leans over. "Judge," she says quietly, "you might want to look at the 1030 case." I look down at the paper. Vanessa Montgomery. Multiple traffic violations, reckless driving, leaving the scene. Okay, not unusual, we get cases like this every week. But then I see Christina's note in the margin. 3rd offense this year. Husband is Richard Montgomery. Now, Richard Montgomery is a name everyone in Providence knows. Real estate developer, big money, the kind of money that builds wings on hospitals and gets your name on buildings, the kind of money that makes people think the rules don't apply to them. 3rd offense, I asked Christina. "Yes, Judge." But this one is different. She hit a parked car outside a school zone, damaged 2 other vehicles, and drove away. A teacher got the license plate. There's also something else. She hands me another file. The federal prosecutor's office asked to observe this case. They wouldn't say why, but they're sending someone. That's when I knew this wasn't going to be a normal Wednesday. When the feds want to observe a traffic case, there's always more to the story, always.
Buckle up, guys. Today we are going to witness a courtroom story that proves money can buy comfort, but not immunity. What begins as a routine traffic docket quickly takes a different turn when a veteran judge senses something isn't right. A familiar name, repeated offenses, and federal interests hint that this case is bigger than it looks. From the start, the tension is set. This won't be an ordinary Wednesday in court.
I take another sip of my coffee and look at the file more carefully. 3 traffic violations in 8 months. Each time she paid the fine and walked away. No points on her license because her husband's lawyers made them disappear. No consequences, no accountability. My father came to this country from Italy with nothing. He worked 3 jobs to support our family. He taught me that in America, the law is supposed to be the same for everyone, rich or poor, powerful or powerless. Everyone stands equal before the law. That's what makes this country work. But I knew, looking at this file, that Vanessa Montgomery had never stood equal before anything in her life. She had always stood above. And I had a feeling that Wednesday morning was going to change that. The morning session started like any other. Traffic cases, small violations, people who made mistakes and were taking responsibility. At 9:45 a.m., I had a case that I still think about. Maria Santos, single mother, 2 kids, works as a nurse at Rhode Island Hospital. She was cited for an expired registration. She came into my courtroom in her hospital scrubs, obviously on her break between shifts. "Mrs. Santos," I said, looking at her file, "you're here because your car registration expired 3 months ago. Can you tell me what happened?" She stood up straight, looked me right in the eye with respect, and said, "Your Honor, I have no excuse. My daughter was sick. She has asthma. And between the hospital bills and taking care of her, I just forgot to renew it. I know that's not a good reason. I take full responsibility. I renewed it the day after I got the ticket, and I brought the proof with me." She handed the paperwork to my clerk. Everything was in order. Current registration, proof of insurance, all paid up. "Mrs. Santos," I said, "I can see you work at the hospital. You're a nurse?" "Yes, Your Honor. Emergency room, night shift mostly, because the pay is a little better and I can be home with my kids during the day." This woman was working night shifts at the hospital, taking care of sick people, raising 2 kids alone, and she forgot to renew her registration while dealing with her daughter's illness. And she came to court, took responsibility, fixed the problem, and showed nothing but respect for the process. Mr. Santos, I'm going to dismiss this case. You fixed the problem immediately. You showed respect for this court, and frankly, this community is lucky to have nurses like you. Case dismissed. Thank you for your service to our community. Her eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you so much. As she was gathering her papers to leave, I heard something from the back of the courtroom. A laugh, not a happy laugh, a mocking laugh. I looked up and saw her for the first time, Vanessa Montgomery. She was sitting in the back row and she was laughing while looking at her phone. Designer clothes. I'm no fashion expert, but even I could tell that her outfit probably cost more than Mrs. Santos makes in a month. Diamond jewelry that caught the light every time she moved. Designer handbag on the seat next to her that probably cost as much as a used car. She looked up from her phone, glanced at Mrs. Santos walking out of the courtroom, and I saw her roll her eyes. Then she turned to the woman sitting next to her, dressed almost as expensively, and whispered something. They both laughed. Mrs. Santos heard it. I saw her shoulders tense up, but she kept her dignity. She walked out of that courtroom with her head held high. That's when I knew this wasn't just going to be another traffic case. This was going to be about something much more important. This was going to be about whether the law really means the same thing for everyone.
As the morning unfolds, the contrast becomes clear. A hard-working nurse admits her mistake, takes responsibility, and earns respect through honesty. The judge dismisses her case, showing compassion where it's deserved. But in the background, another figure watches and laughs. That single moment of mockery quietly exposes a deeper divide, planting the seed for what's about to erupt, and turning this from a traffic matter into a test of character.
At 10:30 sharp, Christina called the case. Vanessa Montgomery, case number 2024 TR 1847. She stood up slowly like she was doing everyone a favor by being there. She walked to the front of the courtroom, and I'm telling you, it was like watching someone walk down a fashion runway. Every step was calculated. She wanted everyone to see her, to notice her, to know that she was different from everyone else in that room. She was followed by a lawyer, expensive suit, leather briefcase, the works. He introduced himself as James Henderson, attorney for Mrs. Montgomery. Mrs. Montgomery, I began looking at the file. You're charged with reckless driving, leaving the scene of an accident, and driving in a school zone at excessive speed. On February 15th at approximately 2:45 p.m., you struck a parked vehicle outside Lincoln Elementary School, causing significant damage. You then left the scene without providing insurance information. Is this correct? Before her lawyer could speak, she laughed, actually laughed. Your Honor, she said with this smile that didn't reach her eyes, I barely tapped the car. There was hardly any damage. I was running late for a spa appointment, and I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Her lawyer put his hand on her arm, trying to get her to stop talking, but she ignored him. Mrs. Montgomery, I said calmly, the police report states that you caused $8,000 in damage to the parked vehicle, and your vehicle struck two other cars as you were leaving. A teacher witnessed the entire incident and had to jump out of the way to avoid being hit. She waved her hand dismissively. That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? Nobody was hurt. I'm happy to pay whatever fine there is and move on. I have lunch plans at noon. I could feel my blood pressure starting to rise, but my father taught me patience. He used to say, Frank, let people show you who they really are before you make a judgment. So I decided to let her keep talking. Mrs. Montgomery, this is your third traffic incident this year. Each time you paid a fine and moved on, as you said, but this time is different. You left the scene of an accident. You put children at risk in a school zone. The standard fine for these violations is $500. She actually laughed again out loud. In my courtroom, $500, Your Honor, I spend more than that on shoes. Is that all? Can I just write a check right now? She started opening her designer handbag. Actually, do you take credit cards? I get points. The courtroom went completely silent. Even her own lawyer looked embarrassed. I saw Christina close her eyes and shake her head slightly. I noticed a man in a suit sitting in the gallery, one I didn't recognize, taking notes. That would be the federal prosecutor's observer. Mrs. Montgomery, I said, keeping my voice level. This is a court of law, not a shopping mall. You seem to think that everything can be solved by writing a check. She shrugged. Well, can it? That's how it's worked the last 2 times. I pay, you all get your money, everyone's happy. I really don't understand why we're making such a big deal out of this. Her lawyer tried again. Your Honor, if I may speak, but she cut him off. James, please, I've got this. She turned back to me. Look, Judge Caprio, can I call you Frank? My husband plays golf with the mayor. We donated money for the new courthouse wing. I think we can all agree that this is just a formality. Let me pay the fine and we can all move on with our day. That's when I knew she wasn't just dismissive. She genuinely believed that her money and her husband's connections put her above the law. She thought she could buy her way out of anything.
When Vanessa Montgomery is called, her confidence dominates the room. She treats the courtroom like a formality, minimizing the danger of her actions and assuming money will smooth everything over. Her casual jokes, open disrespect, and name-dropping only deepen the tension. Each remark pushes the judge closer to a line, while the silent courtroom senses that her usual strategy of paying and walking away is about to fail.
I thought about Mrs. Santos, the nurse who worked night shifts and took full responsibility for forgetting to renew her registration. I thought about my father working 3 jobs, teaching me that respect and dignity matter more than money. And I thought about every person who ever stood in my courtroom and showed respect for the legal system, even when it was hard. Mrs. Montgomery, I said quietly, you cannot call me Frank. You will address me as Your Honor or Judge. And no, you don't have this. What you have is a serious misunderstanding of how the legal system works. She looked genuinely surprised, like no one had ever told her no before. Excuse me, she said, her voice getting colder. You heard me correctly. This is a courtroom, not a country club. Your husband's connections, your donations, your designer clothes, none of that matters here. What matters is that you broke the law. You endangered people. And you seem to think it's all a joke. Her face changed. The fake smile disappeared. I don't appreciate your tone, Judge. I came here prepared to pay the fine like a good citizen. I don't need a lecture about respect from someone who clearly doesn't understand who they're dealing with. Her lawyer grabbed her arm. Mrs. Montgomery, please let me handle this. She pulled away from him. No, James, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to stand here and be insulted by someone who makes less in a year than I spend on vacations. The courtroom gasped. Even her lawyer looked shocked, but I stayed calm. My father used to tell me, Frank, when someone shows you their true character, believe them the first time. Mrs. Montgomery, I said, standing up from my bench, something I rarely do. I've been a judge for 40 years. I've seen every kind of person walk through those doors, rich, poor, educated, uneducated, and you know what I've learned? Money doesn't buy character. Your wealth doesn't give you the right to disrespect this court or endanger people and laugh about it. She crossed her arms. Are you finished? Because I'd like to pay my little fine and leave. No, Mrs. Montgomery, I'm not finished because here's what you don't know. That $500 fine, that was just for the basic traffic violation, but I haven't read you the other charges yet. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Other charges? Her lawyer stepped forward. Your Honor, what other charges? I wasn't informed. I picked up a different file that had been delivered to my chambers that morning. These charges were just filed this morning by the federal prosecutor's office. I believe there's someone here from that office who can explain. The man in the suit stood up. Your Honor, I'm Assistant U.S. Attorney David Chen. We've been investigating Mrs. Montgomery and her husband for tax fraud and money laundering. We're ready to present additional charges. The color drained from Vanessa Montgomery's face. I opened the federal file. Mrs. Montgomery, you're being charged with conspiracy to commit tax fraud, filing false tax returns, and money laundering. The IRS has been investigating you and your husband for 18 months. They've tracked over $2 million in unreported income and fraudulent charitable deductions. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Attorney Chen continued, Your Honor, those donations Mrs. Montgomery mentioned, they were fake. The Montgomerys claimed millions in charitable deductions for donations they never made. They created fake receipts, fake charities, and used shell corporations to hide income. We have 18 months of evidence, including bank records, emails, and recorded phone conversations. This is insane, she whispered. James, do something. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Your Honor, I was retained only for the traffic matter. I had no knowledge of any federal investigation. I looked at Mrs. Montgomery. All that arrogance, all that confidence, all that superiority, it was gone. She was shaking. Mrs. Montgomery, I said, do you understand what this means? Tax fraud is a federal crime. Money laundering is a federal crime. These aren't charges you can laugh off or pay your way out of. I need to call my husband, she stammered. Attorney Chen spoke up. Your husband was arrested this morning at his office. Federal agents are currently searching your home and business premises under warrant. She grabbed the table to steady herself. The same hands that had been casually opening a designer handbag to pay a fine were now white-knuckled and trembling. So let me explain something to you, Mrs. Montgomery, I said. You came into my courtroom today thinking you were above the law. You mocked a hard-working nurse. You laughed about endangering children. You bragged about your wealth and your connections. You treated this court with contempt because you thought money could solve everything. I paused and looked at her directly. But here's what you didn't understand. The law is the great equalizer. It doesn't care how much money you have or who you know. And when you break it, there are consequences. Attorney Chin stepped forward with handcuffs. Mrs. Montgomery, I'm placing you under federal arrest.
The tone shifts sharply as the judge draws a firm boundary. What Vanessa thought was a simple fine turns into a reality check when federal charges surface. Arrogance drains into shock as investigators reveal months of surveillance, hidden income, and fraud. The power dynamic flips instantly. In a matter of minutes, wealth and connections collapse under the weight of evidence, and the courtroom witnesses' accountability arrive without warning.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Wait, she said, tears streaming down her face now, ruining her expensive makeup. Your Honor, please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean any disrespect. Can't we work something out? I'll pay whatever fine you want. I'll apologize. I'll do community service, please. I sat back down. Mrs. Montgomery, 2 hours ago, you were laughing in my courtroom. You were ready to pay $500 like it was pocket change. You treated everyone here with contempt. And now that you're facing real consequences, suddenly you want to apologize. I made a mistake, she sobbed. Please, I have children. So does Mrs. Santos, the nurse you laughed at. She has 2 children and works night shifts at the hospital to support them. But she came into this court with respect and dignity, even though she was scared. You came in here with arrogance and contempt. There's a lesson in that difference. The federal agents led her away. The designer handbag, the expensive jewelry, the perfect hair, none of it mattered now. She was just another defendant who had broken the law and would face justice. After they took her away, the courtroom was silent. I called a 15-minute recess because honestly I needed a moment to collect myself. Christina brought me fresh coffee. Judge, she said quietly, in 15 years working with you, I've never seen anything like that. Neither have I, Christina, neither have I. That afternoon, Attorney Chen came to my chambers to explain. The federal investigation had been going on for 18 months. They knew Vanessa Montgomery would eventually end up in court for her reckless driving, and they wanted to serve the federal charges in a public setting to send a message. We could have arrested her at home, he explained, but people like the Montgomery have spent years believing they're above the law. We wanted the community to see that justice applies to everyone. The story was all over the news by that evening. Trophy wife arrested in Judge Caprio's courtroom on federal charges, but that's not what mattered to me. What mattered came 3 days later. I was in my chambers when Christina told me someone was asking to see me. It was Maria Santos, the nurse. "Judge Caprio," she said, standing in my doorway. "I hope it's okay that I came by. I just wanted to thank you." "Thank me, Mrs. Santos. You don't need to thank me for anything." "Yes, I do. When I was in your courtroom on Wednesday, I heard that woman laughing at me. I saw the way she looked at me like I was beneath her, and it hurt. I worked so hard. I tried to do the right thing, and to have someone treat me like I'm nothing, it hurt." She wiped her eyes, but then I saw the news. I saw what happened, and I realized something. The law really does protect people like me. Working people, honest people, people who might not have money but who have dignity. You showed me that, Judge. You showed all of us that I had to fight back my own tears. Mrs. Santos, you showed yourself that. You came into my courtroom with respect and responsibility. You took care of your problem immediately. You didn't make excuses. That's dignity, that's character, and that's worth more than all the money in the world. She thanked me again and left, but her words stayed with me. A week later, I learned more about the Montgomery case. Their fraud had been systematic and extensive. Over 5 years, they had cheated the government out of millions in taxes. They had claimed deductions for charities that didn't exist. They had hidden income in offshore accounts, and they had used their wealth and connections to intimidate anyone who asked questions. Richard Montgomery took a plea deal, 15 years in federal prison, full restitution, forfeit of assets. Vanessa Montgomery went to trial and was convicted. She got 12 years. 2 months after the trial, I got a letter. It was from Vanessa Montgomery, written from federal prison. I almost didn't open it, but something made me. She wrote, "Judge Caprio, I know you have no reason to read this letter, but I need to write it. I spent my entire adult life believing that money was the answer to everything. If I had a problem, I could buy my way out. If I wanted something, I could buy it. If someone stood in my way, I could buy them off or buy around them. I never worked for anything. I never earned anything. I married money, and I thought that made me special. I thought it made me better than other people. I looked down on people who actually worked for a living, people like that nurse I laughed at in your courtroom, and I'm ashamed. I'm not writing to ask for sympathy or leniency. I'm writing because I finally understand what you tried to teach me that day. The law is the great equalizer. Money can't buy character. Wealth without dignity is worthless. I wish I had learned these lessons 30 years ago, but I'm grateful I'm learning them now, even if it's too late to matter. I kept that letter, not because I forgave her. That's not my job, but because it reminded me why I do what I do. It reminded me that sometimes, just sometimes, people do learn, even if it takes hitting rock bottom to get there. 6 months after the trial, the state used the recovered tax money to fund a scholarship program for nursing students. It was called the Dignity and Service Scholarship, and the first recipient was one of Maria Santos's daughters who wanted to follow in her mother's footsteps. That's justice, real justice, not just punishing the guilty, but using what we recover from wrongdoing to help people who are doing right. I think about that Wednesday morning often. I think about Vanessa Montgomery walking into my courtroom so confident, so arrogant, so sure that money could solve everything. I think about how quickly that confidence crumbled when she faced real consequences. But mostly I think about Maria Santos. I think about her standing in my courtroom in her hospital scrubs, tired from working all night, worried about her daughter, scared about the ticket, but still showing nothing but respect and dignity. She was the real hero of that story. She didn't know it, but she taught everyone in that courtroom more about character than any sentence I could ever hand down. My father used to tell me, "Frank, the measure of a person isn't what they have. It's what they do when they think no one is watching." Maria Santos took responsibility when she thought no one cared. Vanessa Montgomery mocked people when she thought no one would call her out. Character reveals itself in those moments. You know what I learned after 40 years on the bench? Money can buy a lot of things. It can buy designer clothes, expensive lawyers, and temporary comfort, but it can't buy integrity, it can't buy respect, it can't buy character, and it definitely can't buy your way above the law. The law is the great equalizer. It's the one place where your bank account doesn't matter, where your connections don't help you, where your last name doesn't give you special treatment. In my courtroom, a nurse and a trophy wife stand on the same ground. And that's exactly how it should be. So here's what I want you to remember from this story. Treat people with respect no matter who they are or what they do. Take responsibility for your actions. Understand that character matters more than cash. And know that the law applies to everyone equally, from the person who works 3 jobs to the person who doesn't have to work at all. If this story meant something to you, if you believe in equal justice and standing up for what's right, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe. Share these stories so more people understand that justice isn't just for the powerful, it's for everyone. Vanessa Montgomery thought she could laugh off a $500 fine. She learned that some lessons cost a lot more than money. She learned that respect isn't something you can buy, it's something you have to earn. And she learned that in America, when you stand before the law, you stand equal with everyone else, whether you like it or not. I'm Frank Caprio. After 40 years on this bench, I still believe that the best judgment isn't always in the law books. Sometimes it's in your heart, but I also believe this. The law is there to protect all of us equally. Rich or poor, powerful or powerless, we all stand the same before justice. And that's what makes this country work. Thanks for listening. Remember, respect costs nothing, but it's worth everything. Treat people with dignity. Take responsibility for your actions. And understand that no amount of money puts you above doing what's right. God bless you all. And God bless America, where the law truly is the...
The arrest is only the beginning. In the aftermath, the focus returns to dignity, responsibility, and equal justice. A nurse's quiet integrity stands taller than luxury ever could, and even prison walls force reflection. The case leaves behind consequences, lessons, and restored balance. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.